The movie opens in the USSR, 1983, where we see a spaceship called Orbiter 4 returning to Earth in triumph. We meet two astronauts who are overjoyed to be finally returning home after months of space exploration. They begin planning what they will do when they return home, but everything changes when their shuttle suddenly experiences turbulence. The two are then stunned to notice something moving outside the window and making its way inside. The scene then cuts to Kazakhstan, where a man on horseback notices the astronauts' fallen spaceship and approaches it. He is shocked to discover one of the astronauts has died, but moments later, the second one emerges from the spacecraft, barely alive. However, there's clearly something wrong with him, as blood drips from his mouth and his eyes are completely dark. The scene then cuts to Moscow, where we see a neurophysiologist named Dr. Tatyana being questioned by the hospital board members. It turns out she attempted to control a boy's seizure by almost submerging him underwater to cut off his oxygen supply. The method worked effectively, but since she nearly drowned the boy, she's now on trial for her controversial approach. However, Tatiana doesn't seem remorseful and insists she did what she had to do to save the boy. She refuses to accept that she was wrong, even when the board threatens her with dismissal and legal action. After the meeting, Tatiana is approached by Colonel Semiradov, who is the Soviet Union's chief secretary of scientific research. It turns out he had been watching the meeting earlier and was impressed by her fearless attitude. The colonel assures Tatiana that he will take care of the review board and invites her to work on a highly important case. She is hesitant, but he asks her to come with him and at least have a look before deciding anything. After a moment of thought, Tatiana agrees, and together they board a helicopter to depart. After a while, they arrive at a top-secret facility in a remote area where Semiradov briefs Tatiana about astronaut Konstantin, who was the sole survivor of the fallen spaceship. It turns out that contact with the station had been lost the day before the incident in orbit, and Konstantin now suffers from amnesia. Meanwhile, Dr. Rigel, the lead scientist, is attempting hypnosis to help Konstantin recall what happened back there, but all attempts have failed so far. Next, Tatiana enters the interrogation room to speak with Konstantin and introduces herself. She offers him a cup of tea, and he finds her very attractive. Konstantin then gives Tatiana his mother's phone number and asks her to let her know he is still alive. She questions him about what happened back on the spaceship, but he claims not to recall anything. After a brief chat, Tatiana leaves the room and informs the team that the patient is suffering from PTSD. His sensory receptors may have been damaged, as he could touch the hot cup of tea without flinching. However, Tatiana isn't very interested in the case and decides to leave, so Semiradov informs her that a helicopter will take her back to Moscow tomorrow. She agrees and heads to her designated room, but on the way she notices that the facility has brought in several prisoners who are forced to work there. Upon arriving at her room, she tries to call Konstantin's mother, but the operator denies her permission to make a call outside the facility. Later that night, Semiradov unexpectedly arrives at Tatiana's room and tells her he wants to show her something. He then takes her to see CCTV footage of Konstantin's cell, where he is initially seen sleeping peacefully. But soon, the man begins to vomit blood, and a non-terrestrial creature emerges from his mouth. Tatiana is visibly horrified, and Semiradov explains that the creature resides within him and only emerges at night, so Konstantin is unaware of this. Surprisingly, it does not harm Konstantin. Instead, it grants him healing abilities, as he recovered in just 2 days after being severely injured in the fall. Next, Tatiana goes to the cell and attempts to communicate with the creature through a glass barrier. Later, she asks the colonel what he wants from her, and he explains that he chose her because of her radical approach to medicine. He reveals that on the first night, the creature emerged for the first time and brutally killed a medical technician, after which Konstantin was transferred here. Their mission is clear: to separate Konstantin from the alien and help him return to a normal life. Tatiana also appears intrigued by the case and agrees to take on the mission. Following this, Tatiana gets to work and begins examining the results of previous experiments. She learns that attempts had been made to separate Konstantin from the alien before, but without the creature, the man's vitals progressively deteriorated. Every time the creature tries to leave its host, it releases a toxin that relaxes the muscles and knocks the host unconscious. While she is researching, Dr. Rigel enters the room, and Tatiana asks what the alien feeds on. The man speaks rudely and claims that it feeds off the nutrition of whatever Konstantin eats. She notices his hostility and makes it clear that she is here only to help with the case, not to steal his research or Nobel Prize. Later, Tatiana reads Konstantin's personal file and learns that he has a son who is in an orphanage after his mother died. The next day, she arrives at the man's cell and accuses him of killing his companion. Konstantin insists he would never do such a thing, and he just doesn't recall anything. She also accuses him of abandoning his son since he was born out of wedlock and it could harm his reputation. Konstantin is deeply upset and says that he also grew up without a father, but that didn't stop him from becoming a national hero. He then states that even though he finds her attractive, he would prefer to speak with Dr. Rigel from now on. After the session, Tatyana tells the colonel to move Konstantin to a less isolated room during the day and allow him to socialize a little so he doesn't go crazy. After some time, she visits the astronaut in his new room and apologizes, explaining that she was just trying to provoke him earlier to measure his hormone levels under stress. Konstantin then reveals that the woman with whom he had an affair had never told him about their child. He only found out after she died, which was a week before he left for space. He sadly adds that he had been planning to reunite with his son after returning from the mission. That night, Tatyana once again goes to Konstantin's cell and observes the creature through the glass door. She suddenly notices that the alien doesn't seem aggressive, and when she lies down, it mimics her movements. When Tatyana accidentally bumps into a toy, the alien appears fascinated by it. So she requests that the glass door be opened, to which the colonel agrees. She then wears a protective suit and enters the room to approach the alien. She shows the toy, which the alien hugs and shows affection for, which shocks everyone. But suddenly, Tatyana slips and makes a noise, which agitates the creature and prompts it to attack her. It manages to injure her leg, but before it can cause further harm, some soldiers arrive in time to rescue her. The next day, Tatyana reports to Colonel Semiradov that Konstantin and the alien share a common memory and consciousness. She suggests that the creature may have reacted to the toy because it reminded Konstantin of the guilt he feels for his son. She also notes that the alien's time outside the body increases each night, so perhaps one day it will no longer need a host. Tatyana proposes taking Konstantin to Moscow for proper treatment, but the colonel immediately rejects the idea. He reveals that he has been filing false reports daily to protect him and to avoid receiving orders from higher authorities to kill Konstantin to destroy the creature. That night, Tatyana reviews footage of Konstantin's cell, but notices that most of the videos have been edited and cropped. She confronts Dr. Rigel about it, but he brushes it off as a technical glitch, which she doesn't believe. She wants to find out what the alien feeds on, but Dr. Rigel seems scared and urges her to return to Moscow and forget everything. When she continues to press him, he finally relents and agrees to show her the actual truth. Afterward, Rigel hides Tatyana in the back of his jeep and drives her to a highly secret base. He exits the vehicle and joins some soldiers while she remains hidden and observes everything through her binoculars. She notices a large cage where soldiers lock a prisoner who comes here to do labor. Moments later, Konstantin is also brought to the site, and the creature doesn't waste any time in brutally attacking and feeding on the poor man. Tatyana is so horrified by the scene, and she can't help but vomit in disgust. Upon returning to the facility, Dr. Rigel explains that all of this is done on orders from the colonel. He also reveals a crucial piece of information. The creature doesn't just need to eat its prey, but it requires the victim to be scared shitless. The alien actually feeds on cortisol, a substance the brain releases when we experience fear. In other words, the alien sustains itself by consuming the fear of its victims. The next morning, Tatyana takes Konstantin for a jog, and during this, she tells him about the alien and their mission. But the astronaut doesn't seem surprised and asks her to meet him at 1 a.m. That night, the two meet in secret, and Konstantin drops a bombshell, revealing that he has known about the creature all along. He remembers each murder in detail because, as Tatyana noted before, he and the creature share a conscience. He requests that the secret be kept for another 2 weeks, after which the High Commission will no longer allow Semiradov to keep him there, and he will be released. Tatyana is strongly opposed to this, since it means feeding the alien with humans for another 2 weeks. He insists that it's not his decision to feed on the criminals and claims that he will do whatever it takes to go home and take care of his son and his mother. But Tatyana begins calling him a selfish monster, which sparks a heated argument between them. Afterward, Semiradov summons Tatyana and reveals that he knows she spied on the late-night feeding session. It turns out the colonel intends to turn the alien into a powerful weapon to counter threats in the Soviet Union. He justifies his actions by explaining that the victims being fed upon are not ordinary people, but criminals guilty of monstrous crimes such as abuse and murder. The old man adds that perhaps the high command doesn't approve of this experiment, but when they see the results, they will surely recognize him as a hero. Next, the colonel takes Tatyana to the feeding cage, where another prisoner is brought in to be fed upon. The creature is also brought in and is about to attack the man when Tatyana suddenly comes up with an idea. She approaches the cage and convinces herself that she isn't scared. Knowing the alien feeds on fear, she then sings a song that Konstantin likes, which surprisingly calms the creature and makes it behave in a friendly manner. But suddenly, the prisoner accidentally makes a noise, prompting the alien to snap out of its calm state and brutally attack him. The next day, Tatyana examines the dead astronaut's body and learns that the alien didn't choose him because he was in the early stages of cancer. It turns out he had also developed Addison's disease, which caused his cortisol production to be lower than average. Regardless, Tatyana is horrified by what's happening at the facility, so she asks Rigel for help to allow her and Konstantin to escape so she can take him to Moscow for proper treatment. Rigel is afraid of the colonel and initially refuses, but Tatyana challenges him to act like a man and do the right thing. That night, Rigel secretly meets Tatyana and gives her a bag containing a sedative. Tatyana approaches a guard and swiftly incapacitates him with the sedative. She then rushes to Konstantin's room and finds him on the floor, crying and consumed by guilt over his actions. He doesn't want to be saved and says this is his punishment for abandoning his child in an orphanage and not even knowing his name. Tatyana tells him his son's name and reveals that he will turn 7 next week, reminding Konstantin that he still has reasons to live. With this, both of them rush outside, and Rigel hands Tatyana the keys to his vehicle. They say their goodbyes, after which Rigel rushes to his office and calls the high command in Moscow. He tells them about the diabolical experiments of Semiradov, and just then, the colonel himself enters the room and brutally shoots him to death. Next, Semiradov checks the CCTV and sees Tatyana and Konstantin fleeing, so he sends his soldiers and instructs them to keep the man alive but kill the doctor. Soon, the duo is surrounded by the soldiers who begin firing relentlessly, forcing them to take cover. Tatyana then informs Konstantin that she has prepared an injection with a formula that can create the effects of Addison's disease, forcing the creature to leave his body immediately. Once separated, the alien won't survive outside the body for more than an hour, so Konstantin will be free. Tatyana hands the syringe to the astronaut, who immediately injects himself, and the creature suddenly emerges. The alien begins attacking the soldiers, while Tatyana carries unconscious Konstantin in the vehicle and escapes from the facility. Semiradov arrives a little late at the scene, and finding that the duo has already fled, he decides to face the creature alone. In the morning, Tatyana stops the car to check on Konstantin and realizes that his condition is critical. Since he and the alien are linked, any harm to the creature causes him intense pain as well. Tatyana feels completely helpless, and to make matters worse, Semiradov and his team approach her. A defeated Tatyana admits she was wrong to believe Konstantin could survive without the creature. Semiradov feels proud that he was right, so he takes out the badly injured alien, intending to force it back inside Konstantin. Following this, the evil colonel tries to hurt Tatyana, and upon seeing this, Konstantin becomes enraged. He summons the last of his strength and uses his shared consciousness with the alien to attack the colonel and his men. The creature wastes no time and violently kills all the bad guys, before finally returning to Konstantin's body and healing him again. In the end, the nightmare is finally over, and Konstantin and Tatyana see the higher authorities arriving in vehicles. Tatyana urges him to stay calm and assures him that she will definitely find a solution to this problem in Moscow, but in a shocking twist, Konstantin reveals that he has already found the solution and shoots himself. The poor guy soon collapses dead, while Tatyana is left distraught and in tears. In the next scene, some time has passed, and Tatyana has returned to her normal life. The movie ends with her arriving at an orphanage and adopting Konstantin's son as a tribute to his father's acts of bravery. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more of our upcoming videos.